Welcome back, everyone. Another Suibhne video called Armed Neutrality, the animated history of Switzerland. We've done a lot of these videos, and one we have it is Switzerland. So let's jump right in, shall we, and see what it's all about. Obviously, of course, this is a topical type video, meaning skimming the surface of the top of the history, which is probably Switzerland. So if you have any videos that maybe portray different lights of this video in more depth, please put down below. Let's go.
This episode is supported by World of Tanks. Thank you to all of these nice people for supporting the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to join them and also get a free Suibhne enamel pin, you can do so at patreon.com/Suibhne. Also guys, the merch store has a 20% off for Black Friday promo going on up until December 3rd. So if you want to get some merch, you can use the code Black Friday at checkout. Thanks. What is Switzerland?
What is it?
And who are the Swiss? Sorry to get all metaphilosophical on you, but I mean, come on, just look at the place. Ask anyone and you'll get a variety of answers. It's the country with the cows and the cheese. Okay, that's not helpful. What about the Swiss language? German, right? Except German people can't seem to understand it, and also some Swiss people speak French, Italian, and a fourth one everyone seems to forget. This is even less helpful. Here we go, the origins of the Swiss nation-state.
Are they? So they're coincided in north of the Alps and within the Alps. So, yeah, it's a melting pot of Europe.
This should clear things up. Ancient Switzerland was dominated by the Helvetii and the Rhaetians, who flourished in the Hallstatt culture, living side by side in the valleys of the Alps before being conquered by the Romans. So far, so good. When the Romans fell, the Alps became the crossroads for Germanic tribes like the Alemanni and the Lombards invading the empire. So there we have our answer. The Swiss are just a weird mishmash of Celtic, Germanic, and Roman people without their own identity. Turns out the truth resists simplicity. Look a little closer and we can find something that united these people over all those centuries. Alpine transhumance.
The Alps.
What the heck is transhumance? I'm glad you asked. Transhumance is the process of droving livestock to higher pastures in the summer to low valleys in the winter.
Okay, so like a weird version, maybe not a weird version, that's not the right word. An interesting version of pastoralism.
Sounds almost too simple, right? Well, it's actually far more important to the fabric of the Swiss identity than we think. The seasons and the mountains dictated literally everything. Where you lived, what kind of house you built, what you farmed to eat, and what trade routes you were on. The Swiss were tied together by the Alps, passing down their way of life from culture to culture for centuries, laying down a nationalistic identity deeper than religion, monarchy, or even what language they spoke. The Swiss were Swiss long before Switzerland even existed. Alright, this intro's gone on long enough.
Okay, I was doing that because I was waiting for the music of the intro. There it is. Beautiful.
Borders separate people. They separate trade, culture, food, and language. Some borders are man-made, such as the ones we have today, but nothing separates humans like natural borders. Rivers, oceans, deserts, and in this case, mountains. The Swiss Alps form the border between the Germanic, Franco, and Italic language families. Okay, that was easy. Let's talk about Reichsfrei. The Holy Roman Empire granted the state of Reichsfrei to cities or areas that were difficult to get to or largely self-sufficient, like for example, the Alps. It made them self-governing with no count, lord, or duke to answer to, only the emperor. 3 Alpine cantons, Schweiz, Uri, and Unterwalden, were granted Reichsfrei to govern the trade route linking Italy to the empire.
Okay.
Together, they were Waldstaaten, forest cantons, and their relationship with each other grew over time. They worked together on matters of trade and eventually defense in a series of treaties.
So that means eventually they're going to combine.
Why the need for treaties though? Turns out these areas really loved their Reichsfrei status. Ruling themselves high up in the mountains was a pretty sweet gig, and when an Austrian royal family started eyeing up their land,
Habsburgs?
they were quick to retaliate. We don't need no hungry Habsburgs eating up our villages and towns into a conglomeration of hereditary states, forcefully perpetuated by selective marriage alliances including but not limited to incest, which, you know, they could have just gone with like, fight the power or something. The Habsburgs, of course, were that infamous Austrian noble house that practiced some pretty land-hungry marriage policies. But they actually had their start in modern-day Switzerland, coincidentally, so we all learned something new today. The forest cantons banded together and drove the Habsburgs out of their land, and at the Battle of Morgarten, the Swiss were allegedly so brutal that they gained a reputation as bloodthirsty warriors. The Swiss of all people. I know, right? Bet you weren't expecting that.
The irony.
The three became known as the Alte Eidgenossenschaft, but we just called them the Old Swiss Confederacy, Swiss coming from the Canton of Schweiz.
Canton of Schweiz. Okay. So is that the most important one because of that? The namesake?
3 cantons soon became 8. The cities of Lucerne, Zurich, Glarus, Bern, and Zug also weren't fans of the stinky Habsburgs and liked the cut of the Confederates' jib. So
Okay, so this is like it's a confederation of Swiss states that ultimately will nationalize.
one by one, they all became members of the Confederacy in an eternal alliance. The Habsburgs, thoroughly unamused, thought this whole Confederacy thing had gotten way out of hand and it was time to put an end to it. Twice they attempted to retake the Confederacy's land, and twice they were repelled. Morgarten was no fluke victory. The Swiss were just really good at fighting. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of the Swiss action. Freiburg, Neuchâtel, and Solothurn joined as associates of Bern. Appenzellen broke away from the Abbey of St. Gall. Aargau was conquered after its duke was exiled for supporting the anti-pope. And yes, anti-pope is a real thing.
Yeah, we need to learn more about that.
The German-speaking half of the Prince-Bishopric of Sion broke away from the Dukes of Savoy, and Schaffhausen and St. Gallen became associates.
So that's how it becomes pretty big.
Last player we'll be looking at is the Grissens. This territory was divided at the time between 3 alliances: the Grey League, the 10 Jurisdictions, and the League of the House of God. The area was notable for its Romansh-speaking population, the often forgotten 4th stepchild of Switzerland, remnants of the old Romanized Ratian people from the days of the Roman Empire. Okay, so the map is beginning to look a lot more like the Switzerland we all know and love. Not without some hiccups though, like the old Zurich War and the Rouen Affair, which would nearly collapse the whole thing, but soon enough, these brothers' bonds would be sealed in warfare. Firstly, the Confederates conquered the Thurgau, which really upset the Habsburgs. In retaliation,
What doesn't upset the Habsburgs?
Sigismund of Austria made a deal with Charles the Bold of Burgundy to attack the Swiss in exchange for land. However, ironically, the Habsburgs and the Swiss ended up working together against Charles in the Burgundy Wars after he took the land without delivering on his part of the deal. The Swiss and the Habsburgs defeated Charles 3 times in battle, in the last of which he was killed. The Swiss proverb was coined: Charles the Bold lost his goods at Conson, his boldness at Merton, and his blood at Nancy.
Interesting. The Lombardy Wars. Have to look more into that too.
To try and ensure this wouldn't happen again, the Habsburgs decided to set up their own confederacy with blackjack and called the Swabian League, and the two became fierce rivals. Maximilian I then tried to annex land in the Grissens to control the Umbriel Pass, and had passed reforms in the Diet of Worms to centralize his power over the empire. This erupted the Swabian War, and the Habsburgs, together with their Swabian League, were swiftly defeated.
The Swiss are nothing to play with, I guess. Jeez.
The 2 wars had numerous consequences. Along with creating a sense of unity, it had allowed the Swiss to assert themselves as a strong military power able to project its influence outward.
What does that cross mean?
West to the Jura Mountains, and south to the Leventina Valley, a traditional Lombard Italian-speaking area. Right, let's do an overview. Switzerland is starting to look and feel pretty Swiss. But there was still the matter of what being Swiss actually meant. These cities had banded together in opposition to the Burgundians, French, and Austrians, but what exactly were they now? Well, let's take a look at what the Swiss had to offer the world. Cows. Okay, but not nation-defining. Skiing? Nah, that won't be for another few centuries. Fighting?
Mercenaries.
Maybe we're onto something here. Turns out the Burgundian Wars had given the Swiss a bit of a reputation as incredible warriors. In a time when Europe was moving away from feudal levies toward career soldiers, Swiss soldiers became highly prized.
Is that where you get the Swiss Guard?
Makes sense, right? The Swiss were basically stuck in the mountains all day, defending their valleys and trade routes, quietly getting really good at fighting. Having a Swiss contingent in your army could mean the difference between victory and defeat. And just like that, the Swiss mercenary industry was born. Everyone wanted them in their armies. The mercenaries were so effective that the elite members were sought after as bodyguards, a sort of late medieval personal detail for royal courts all over Europe.
So very similar to like the Varangian Guard.
The top echelon of these guards were the 100 Swiss, the bodyguards of the kings of France, and the Pontifical Swiss Guard of the popes in Rome.
Yep, and a very famous, like if you want to see like a interesting, like if you're a gamer, watch the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood trailer, and towards the end of it, there's the Pope and there's a bureaucrat that's in a carriage. They get confrontation with Ezio, the main character of the game, and then the Swiss Guard, the Papal Swiss Guard is what it's called actually, forms a formation, and they just look like you don't want to mess with them. Similar to like the Varangian Guard, you just don't want to mess with them.
Having a Swiss Guard force was kind of a badge of honor, since they were seen as fiercely loyal, capable, and would fight to the death with honor. Now it's time to talk about something that, according to my comments, I didn't go into nearly enough detail about in my Italy video, the Italian Wars. I'll let you guess where they were fought.
Greece.
The Italian Wars were basically a dispute between the rising powers at the time for influence over Europe. France, the Habsburgs, Spain, Venice, and the papacy, and Italy was their battleground. The wars themselves were long and complicated and ultimately fruitless, other than setting the stage for a rivalry between the enormous Habsburg Empire of Charles V and his French and Ottoman enemies, which admittedly became quickly overshadowed by Charles dealing with a troublesome monk at home, publicly declaring that the Catholic Church was corrupt and illegitimate. His Protestant ideas would ring with some of the German leaders, beginning the Schmalkaldic War.
Schmalkaldic War.
Charles soon realized that the whole thing simply wasn't worth the headache and signed the Peace of Augsburg, legalizing Protestantism, before abdicating and dividing his empire. Don't worry buddy, ain't no shame in quitting. So, why did I bring up the seemingly unrelated war in the first place? Turns out the Swiss were instrumental to the conflict. Everybody wanted Swiss mercenaries, and war is good for business. The Swiss fought on all sides and profited greatly off of the seemingly never-ending conflicts. But let's get back to that.
Well, that's not individualistic war. Sorry, individualistic profits. Like that's family profits. Is that like we're talking trickle down economics because of that? Or are we talking like there's a teeth that's went to like the Confederacy? Like what? How does profiting from wars develop a greater Swiss state?
He was, of course, Martin Luther, the father of the Reformation. His teachings would have a profound impact on a Swiss preacher, Ulrich Zwingli. And boy, do we have to talk about Zwingli. The humanist preacher from St. Gallen stunned onlookers in Zurich in an act of defiance when he publicly called for the people to partake in the sacrilegious and downright blasphemous sin of eating sausages. That's right, he defied the church by claiming that the practice of not eating meat during the time of Lent was unscriptural and should be voluntary, not mandatory. The event became known as the Affair of the Sausages. Soon enough, the Reformation had taken a hold of Switzerland, with some of the cantons switching over to the Protestant faith.
All over some sausages.
I wonder where this will go. Now, the Protestant Reformation, you may recall, had a massive impact on the European continent. It kick-started the German Peasants' War against serfdom, the French expulsion of the Huguenots, the Catholic Counter-Reformation.
I really like this domino animation. I'd love to see like more of this.
And eventually the 30 Years' War, one of the bloodiest conflicts in European history. Now, because all sides of the war had used Swiss mercenaries, Switzerland basically stayed out of the war. But soon, the continent got tired of butchering each other and sat down to negotiate peace in Westphalia. After signing the agreement, the European powers capped off the meeting by recognizing Switzerland as independent. then tossed them the keys and told them to lock up. Thanks, I guess. So Switzerland is now fully independent, and Europe is at peace. Other than dealing with some local things, they kind of just sat around for a while with not much to do. Okay, just kidding. Let's talk about Swiss neutrality. Although their mercenaries fought in nearly every war, and the Swiss Guard were the bodyguards of dozens of monarchical courts, the Swiss themselves stayed out of wars in the early modern period. Why? Turns out the Europeans had become so dependent on Swiss mercenaries that neither side wanted the Swiss to land in the hands of the other. So everyone kind of just mutually agreed that Switzerland was neutral territory.
Ah, so this actually was an effect.
You leave it alone, we leave it alone. Everyone can buy mercenaries and everybody wins. Especially the Swiss, who profited greatly off of the wars. After all, if you're good at something, never do it for free. The situation reached its zenith during the French Revolution. The old Confederacy became the Helvetic Republic, and then the new Confederacy, both client states of France. Now, we all know how this story ends with Napoleon being defeated at Waterloo because he couldn't escape if he wanted to. But as for the Swiss, the Europeans sat down at the Treaty of Paris and formally guaranteed Swiss neutrality, disbanding the Swiss mercenaries and the Swiss Guard once and for all.
Wow.
The ideas of the revolution being fully put into place in 1848 after the Civil War of the Sonderbund, formally federalizing Switzerland into a modern, constitutional, and federal nation state. Switzerland was Swiss, and its citizens, no matter what language, background, or religion, were given freedoms and rights by their government. And surprisingly enough, they remained fiercely loyal to that doctrine of armed neutrality, staying out of the First and Second World War even when compelled by others to get involved. It allowed for the growth of the Swiss banking industry, a controversial topic to this day, as well as making it a haven for revolutionaries, some of whom history has not been kind to. Something that embodies the Swiss legacy for me has always been the final last stand of the Swiss Guard in revolutionary France. Revolutionaries stormed the palace at Tuileries to capture the king, whom they didn't know had already fled, and the Swiss Guard fought to the death in one last triumphant stand to protect their king.
Wow. I want to learn more about that.
This monument of the Swiss lion protecting the coat of arms of the French king, wounded and dying, was carved into the stone wall at Lucerne to remember their sacrifice. The last remnant of the Swiss Guard today are the Pontifical Swiss Guard, who serve the Pope in the Vatican City, complete with old regalia. But bear in mind, the actual Swiss Guard on duty are not on display. They're probably somewhere where you can't see them, but they can see you. Switzerland today embodies neutrality. Some criticize this stance, claiming that by not standing for anything, they also don't stand up to anything, such as in the case of the Second World War,
With Nazi banking.
when they refused to enter the war against the injustices of the Third Reich and the fascist regimes, while still others applaud the neutrality stance. As for me, I don't know. I'm going Switzerland on this one. But you don't have to. You can take...
I like this one. I know more about Swiss heritage and Swiss history than I did before. Interesting how it kind of like there's so many parallels with it, with like the Confederation and that Confederation being threatened, and then unity from that. The Swiss Guard parallel to the Varangian Guard, the neutrality after the fact because of a deterrent of their skills, their proximity of the Alps, and that culture kind of like being a commonality even through heritage, through language, and so forth. Love this video. Love this channel. Suibhne. Go subscribe to them. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave me some video suggestions or comments down below. Subscribe if you feel like it. And peace out. Bye-bye.